Okay, so it is 11:06. Can we go ahead and welcome past Governor BK Knappenberger? Are you ready for us, BK? All right. Take it away, BK.
Let's see if I can share screen.
BK, did you want to try to screen share, or do you want me to do it on my end for you?
I'm not showing it coming up.
Okay. Do you want me to screen share for you?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do.
There it is. Okay, can everybody see that? Is everybody getting a copy of it?
Yes, yep.
Yes.
Okay. Let me go ahead and start. Just to let you know, this is actually a dual presentation. It's both youth protection and it's risk management. And I volunteered to be both positions for our club, for our district. And the reason for that was to fill in the gaps. And the way I looked at this originally, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You're missing maybe 6 pieces and you put it up and frame it. You can tell what the picture is, but you're still missing 6 pieces. And the risk management actually goes ahead and fills in those 6 positions. And you'll see that as we progress. Go ahead. Why are we doing this? Well, we've got to educate and get all of our members and our youth understanding. 2 things have changed. Number one, the actual youth are undergoing training now, which they didn't used to do. And that is a tremendous asset. Number 2, I don't do this to instruct the Quanians how to handle the youth, but how to protect yourself. Because if we protect you as a Quanian, then we're going to protect the kids that we're trying to serve. And so our purpose is to empower each of our members, whether they be the youth or the adults, in knowing what the parameters are, and then we can do positive youth development. Go ahead. Quantis will start out as showing you the negatives. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys are going to suffer some type of sexual abuse. 85% do not report their abuse. This is all done nationally by stats. It's not Kiwanis stats. And the most important stat is that 91% of the abusers are actually known and trusted by the individual that is being abused. And so how do we combat, or how do we handle this? There's 3 areas. Number 1 is access. The individual has to have access to the youth. Number 2, they normally want privacy. And number 3 is control. And I view this a lot like with police work, that it can be a pimp trying to get a new prostitute. He'll gain her confidence. He'll gain the camaraderie first, and then eventually will have a new prostitute working for him. And we have our main signature project for Phoenix is Kids Day at the Fair. And all it would take is to start developing that relationship while they're with somebody. They're not going to apparently try to do something there, but they want to start that, and we'll talk later about one-on-one communications. And that's the thing that's very hazardous. If they can get it started, then they can go from there. Next. One of the issues that we're going to talk about is that we have adolescents and they have a tremendous suicide rate. And you're seeing more and more of that on the news today. Kids just don't know what direction. And that's where Kiwanis comes in. We're going to give them that positive encouragement. We know what the risk factors are. They're listed there. And let me stop at this point to give you 2 things. Number 1, there's a document we're going to show you that has to do with membership application. And I'll explain that to you. There's a second document that is going to be the policies and procedures to hand out to those that are going to be at any event, whether they be a Kiwanian or other volunteer. And I have those available and Ken has them. If you can email me that you've attended this, I'll make sure you get credit for it. And the simplest email is QuantusClubOfPhoenix@iCloud.com. And I've got that reserved just to do our special events and to do the training. Next. I'll repeat that at the end as well. So what I told you at the beginning is this is a combination of both youth protection and risk management. And more and more, all of our districts, the two positions are working in tandem, or one individual covers both. And it's pretty obvious when you start to see the reasons of why we're doing that. And we had in payouts a total amount that's exorbitant. And when you look at the average payout of being $7 million, it's because that number one payout of that totally 60 million was a real high payout. It did not occur in the Southwest District, but it's one of those where we have to do our best, and that's where risk management comes in to prevent these situations. And what's interesting to me is that even though 70% of our payouts and our issues are with adult, 30% are by youth. So we have to make sure that we protect everybody. And on the risk management side, we have our liability insurance coverage, and we're working on a continual basis. And we made changes this year that we're going to cover. Next. This is the first form I'm going to share with you. And this is a revised supplemental membership application. It's 2-page, 2-sided. And the first goes into more details than Qantas International to better know the person that we're bringing in. The second page has some details about their history, which is both positive and negative. We want to know what groups they've belonged to. We want to know how they've exceeded at work. And we want to know more about the person that's coming in. If we'll do the next slide, the top of the second page, go ahead. The top of the second page is been revised so that we can ask some questions to find out what's going on with this person that wants to be a Quantian. And there's 3 items here that I've listed. Number one, Qantas membership is possible for a predator of children. And what we've had recently is that when I went to the training in Las Vegas last month, and we had representatives from all of the districts, we found out that several districts have had Quantians enter into their club, and they accepted them because they're trying to increase membership. They did not realize that these people had been on early release from prison, changed states, and did not register with the state they went to. And 2 of the districts spoke up about this. And once they published the list of members, anonymous and members came forward and said, "Are you aware that guy's been doing time for abusing children?" And they had no idea. Then they had to go through a process of removing him as a new member. The number 2 thing on here is that we have adapted this form so that when you get a copy of it in yellow, there's going to be where you have to put your club name in. And any club is totally available to use this form. We're sending it to Qantas International as well. And we want to make sure that we go ahead and look at better ways to seek the people that are coming in, what their background is. And this back page starts out with the words, most of our community service involves working with children from whom we seek to provide the positive role models, which is the reason for the next 2 questions. The first question on the second page is, have you ever been arrested? And we use the word arrested. It used to be convicted. And the reason we say arrested, you can plead out, you can be a child offense, but you can plead out to a misdemeanor that has nothing to do with that. And we want to make sure that that is not happening. So we use the word actually that you were arrested, either felony or misdemeanor, for actions that would, if undertaken today, risk the health or safety of our children? Yes or no? If yes, please provide. And on this form, I've got real short space to make the slide shorter, but there's more room on the actual form. The second question is, what have you ever been arrested for a criminal offense other than a traffic violation? Yes or no? And when there should be 3 steps to acquiring a new member. The first is to have them fill out the application. The second is an orientation. And during that orientation, even if they check no, just you would go over that point and say, you've had time since you filled out this form. Is there anything that you've thought of after filling out the form that we need to discuss right now? Give them that opportunity, put them on the platform, see if they have any issues that are going to affect Kiwanis, and then go on through the whole thing. The third step is you must publish their name, whether it be in minutes and whether it be in a newsletter or whatever, and say, here's our new member perspective that's going to be voted on at the next meeting. That way, anybody that knows any history on this person that has not been published can come forth and say, are you aware about this individual? Then you can do your due diligence. There is no rush to get a member in. That 1 month time span is plenty, and they know that they'll be on the next agenda. They'll be approved by the next board, and we shouldn't be having an applicant bring in this application and try to have it rush through that day. Next slide. There's a part of the risk is that we have to define what a risk is, and that's where something becomes uncontrolled, where we've tried to control it. And there's 3 phases. One is risk assessment. And what we need to do is think about all the projects that we do and try to figure out ways that, looking at it from a perspective, are we protecting ourselves and are we protecting our children? Number 2 is that we have to manage. And one of the new tools that Kiwanis International has, and it's in a beta form, but they want you to take photos of your site on all your significant projects and then write up a detailed description of exactly what's happening. And I use as example the Kids Day at the fair. We have 3 main areas. We go to the petting zoo, the simple rides, and then we go and feed each of the children. And one of the things you would do is take photos of those and what you've done to protect kids and how you're going to work with them. And then Kiwanis International will send you back a score and tell you the areas you're weak in or the areas you're positive in. And we've done this a couple times as a trial, and they're getting ready to make this official shortly. The idea, again, is just trying to prevent what is we're not aware of, that's the potential to have something go wrong. An example I can give you is YMCA did not realize, and nobody went out to look at a goalpost that was there for doing a soccer game. And when they actually played the game, they hit the goalpost, it came down and injured children. And it shouldn't have happened if they had been out trying to do something preventative. If you do the next slide, I'm going to go through these quickly. This is the claims by individual clubs and districts to Kiwanis in a 10-year, and slip and fall is the number 1. And I know we've had that occur at Kiwanis camp, at our camp Kiwanis, because when it's, especially in the winter, that those sidewalks get slippery and it goes on down. Those are the kind of things that may not seem that significant, but every injury, everything that brings a question to us, we need to make sure we're doing the best we can. Next. Go ahead. This one tells you by district, and we are number 4th. We're near the end of that chart, the 4th highest, and I'll go over in detail and explain why we're that high. It comes just under 400,000 that we've paid out in the last 10 years. Go ahead. And in the last span, it says on here 25 years, but it's actually more frequent than that. The highest payout was at Camp Kiwanis, And that particular one, I had talked to Bob Kay years prior to this happening. They wanted to replace all of the wooden bunks there, and we hadn't gotten around to it. It was close, but not quite. And what ended up happening is that we lost the ability to keep track of that and get it budgeted. We had some people using the facility. The bunk bed collapsed, injuring people below, and we did a fairly significant payout on that. It ended up being almost $100,000. They had a thing at the Zobra event where an ATV struck somebody else. We had one at actually a haunted mine where on this one, we did our complete good due diligence. We had the state mine inspector come out and look at it. They gave an approval, which really mitigated the payout on this. And what happened is a lady came in there. I'm assuming that was with Halloween. She was an elderly lady, ended up not being stable, leaned against a post, one of the timbers that was there. It caved in on her. And when that did, that section of the mine caved in and ended up in the death. And that was a major payout. You go on down and you can see that we've done several that have to do with driving, one of which we served alcohol to somebody and they ended up striking an over intoxicated guest, struck a security guard. And what we need to do is, if we're in charge of parking, we take on some of that responsibility. So we have to think about it. And it goes on down with the list. We had an explosion of a cooking device, and those are real hard to detect. You can expect and make sure they're the best you can, but some of those are going to happen no matter what. We obviously had a situation where we hit a pole and knocked it down, had to be repaired at Camp Kiwanis. So our district, we don't have the really bad situations that others do, but we have, and historically, those are behind us, and we've had several years now of positive, and that's what we need to work towards. Next. There's two here of the heat maps. This first one describes what we actually have, and it shows that that slip and fall is up in the red area, and everything else is either in the mid or down in the green. And when you get your copies, I can send you the PowerPoint. You'll be able to see this in detail. The next one. And this one shows you the heat, and it's actually on what the worst exposure is to us. And sexual misconduct is right there at the top. And it goes on down to things that are not as critical for us to be highlighting. And it's bad to have a slip and fall. It's bad to have all the other things that happen. But obviously, we don't need to be like Boy Scouts. And they're going through a very, very strenuous time right now. They've tentatively scheduled, and they're at the point now of a $1 billion payout. And it has been just decimating to the entire Boy Scout organization, which I was very proud to be part of and excelled in it. And they still are in the appeal process. And we have information about how the Kiwanis is going to work with Boy Scouts in the future. The next slide. Everybody wants to know how we're covered. This basically tells our individual coverage, and it talks about each occurrence. It talks about how much is maximum for payout. It also talks about self-insured retention, and it goes through each of the details in there. I'm not going to take the time to go over those, but basically we're covered for about $2 million on an individual incident, and we have the self-insuring. And we have some more slides that will better explain that. Go ahead. This one are the exclusions. When I was governor, I did one of my first visits to a small city up in the area of Northeast New Mexico. And they had a Kiwanis club there, and I went to visit with them. And I had never heard of them, didn't know much about them. And it was sort of interesting. They only met once a year. And the reason they met and the reason that they were Kiwanians is they held a rodeo and they had Brahma bull rides and everything else. And they were part of Kiwanis because they thought the insurance covered everything. And I had to explain to them, no, the insurance doesn't cover you. And they ended up turning in their charter and became a non-club and joined another operation so they could try to get insurance. And it brings up the point, because we're Kiwanians, that insurance covers the Kiwanians and the volunteers that work for us. We do not have the ability to take our insurance and give it to a group, whether they be nonprofit or whatever, and insure an event. We can get a waiver for event from Kiwanis International, and they'll give us an actual certificate that shows that we're covering what we cover and what we don't cover, but we don't cover the event itself. We only cover what our Kiwanians and our volunteers are responsible for. And if you go through this list, we can't do balloons, parachuting, we can't do bungee jumping, and it goes on and on. And there's a lot of clubs that try to be innovative and try and do something that's out and sort of beyond. You got to be really cautious, and somebody needs to sit back and say, wait a minute, is the thing that we're doing going to possibly cause injury? Maybe we not be associated with it. Next. Director and liability. A lot of people ask exactly why are we paying that? What's covered? This goes through in detail and explains that we are covered for the acts of our officers and our directors. And it talks about what specifically is covered. And then at the bottom is the funding. And that's just recently increased this year by $5. It used to be a flat $13. $18. And what happened is that the general liability was 13 and the D&O was 5 and 4. And then we added youth protection now for 5. So now the new total is 22. And that youth protection not only covers the aspect of youth protection, but it also takes care of our cyber. And I'll get to that in a minute. The districts have to pay a separate fee of $800, and that we need to understand that when the members pay, just as Ken was talking about, that we have to be caught up on our fee payment. That's what this does. It provides this coverage. Next. When I first joined to the youth protection group, based on my back police experience, we sat down for an entire session of a weekend retreat when we were meeting in person. And we put together what we thought were the factors and what made them a low risk, a medium risk, and a high risk. And on this sheet, the blue were the ones that we felt were the things, and this is probably 6 years old, that we needed to concentrate on as Kiwanians. And so as you look at the top here, as an activity, if it's held in a public access area, it's much easier. Once we get into a private home, it's much more challenging to try and ensure everybody is going to be properly taken care of. And if you're out in the wilderness, whether it be at a camp or an outing for the weekend or whatever you're going to, that makes it the most challenging and the highest risk. When you talk about adult interaction, the more adults that we can have there responsible to supervise, to moderate, and to mentor, the better off we're going to be. When we talk about clothes, anytime you have to do showering or help, especially disabled children, that's going to be more challenging for us. You talk about education, and as I said, one of the greatest things that we've done recently is we offer the training now to the key clubs and the other youth organizations. We didn't historically do that. The volunteers, we want to make sure that we don't have contact with the youth. I know with Special Olympics, we hug them at the end, but we want to be somewhat reserved in our physical contact with any youth that we are not personally associated with as individuals within our club, et cetera. And then last, we talk about children. any of the children as they get younger or have disability provide more challenges. Next. This is showing the Kiwanis International versus Southwest District. And if you'll notice on here, Southwest District is one of the better districts of having things current. We have the background checks, we have the advisors appointed, and we make sure that we are doing the youth protection training. And a lot of the districts haven't done that. Next. There's a man that a Kiwanian named Dylan Kalkhurst, and he's out of Florida, and we met him when we went to the convention in Orlando, and he did a presentation, and he has spent his entire life separating generations, and it goes all the way back from my grandparents all the way up to the current children, and they find that each generation is key to something that is available to them, and that is significant for them for most of their life. When I was starting in the police department, they had a video that we all had to watch. It was, "Where Were You When?" And that video basically said, in the first 7 years of your life, you are going to basically develop how you will be for the rest of your life, unless you have a significant impact. And that meant that you'll probably get the music you'll listen to, you'll have the ethics you're going to have, the integrity you're going to have, the ability to do well in school or not, the ability to deal well with other individuals, etc. And the instructor of that explained that that staff in Colorado University, the actual staff, gathered money and paid for a new paneled wood wall of genuine wood. And they were so proud of it. And some little boy came in, didn't understand, put his bike there. The bike fell down. And when the bike fell, it scratched the wood. And one of the teachers who had been a driver for that money came out and stomped that bike, lost full control. And they explained that was a significant impact to that little child, and he'll probably respect others' property from that point forward. Not the best example, but an example. Next. This one talks about each of the generations and what's significant about what they went through. And the generation that we currently had for kids was called Generation Z. Well, then after 2011, they ran out of indicators. So they went back to alpha, starting the alphabet over again. And those are our youngest. The ones that we actually are going to be dealing with is that Generation Z. Next. The Generation Z are completely connected and disconnected in a strange way. I have a nephew, and I was sending him his happy birthday notice, and it was right after the stroke of midnight, and he ended up texting me back a message within a couple of minutes. In other words, he didn't shut off his phone to go to sleep, and he was in grade school at the time, and that phone being on was that important to him. The only other example I can give you where you have to be on 24 hours is when I was a supervisor on the police department. They could call me at any time to roll out. But these kids don't need to have that. And parents can tell them, turn your phone off, turn off your computer devices, let you get some sleep. Another example I had, we were heading to Orlando, and we were at the front of the plane, and both Ellie and I each had a row to ourselves. And I was excited, and they were shutting the door and on Southwest, and the door was almost all the way shut. And a slender young girl slipped through and quickly sat in the seat next to me. And I looked over at Ellie and I said, well, I guess there's two of us in my row now. And as soon as we got on the approach to take off, she set up her phone and started texting, and never once looked up from that on the entire flight, never had a meal, never acknowledged that when the flight attendant was there, She was totally in that world. And I could see out of my peripheral vision, she was just texting to one individual after another. And that was her entire life happening right there before her. So we need to develop deeper relationships. We need to make sure that individuals are not just going to a phone to live their life, that they actually have people that can mentor them and help them. And that's where we are going to be insistent that our Kiwanians represent Kiwanis in the best light forward. And that's part of the reason that we have to have an annual training. And annual training, you may say, well, I just had this a year ago. Well, you'll forget things that are covered. And by having it referred back to you again, you go, oh, yes, I remember that now. We do need to make sure that we're covering that. And it's good for everybody to have that. And Kiwanis International pushes it. They've emphasized it now as their number one thing, so much so that they increase the fees to make sure that youth protection has the highest priority. Next slide. What happened back in 2019, Kiwanis wasn't sure that we were not going to go down the road of Boy Scouts or other organizations. So we hired a group to come in for an evaluation called Presidium. Presidium came in and did an evaluation of Kiwanis, and it turned out that they had all kinds of recommendations for policy, procedure, for training. And Kiwanis was so enamored by what they did, they've hired them on now as permanent. And other organizations also use Presidium. The YMCA, where I'm on the board, also uses them, and others do as well. So we have somebody from the outside looking at what we do now, which is wonderful because it helps us to keep our programs, our mentors, our leaders to be doing the correct thing. Next. If you go online, and this picture that you see on your screen is current, but it can change frequently on the photos that they use. So I don't worry about getting the latest one. It could actually be different today. But when you do Kiwanis.org, if you /youth protection, this screen will come up and it'll give you the ability to access all of the different things for youth protection. Next. As far as Presidium, your secretary can get you signed up and can get volunteers signed up to go on to take these classes. And if anybody doesn't know how to sign that up, this details, and if they still can't get it, they can get a hold of Presidium and they'll give them access. And what Presidium does now is they have videos for us to watch on an annual basis before we do our events. And those videos are scenarios where, and they're about 5 minutes online, and you do each of these trainings. And depending on your position, there's anywhere from 5 to about 6 videos. There's a total of 20, and it'll be geared for the position, whether you're a volunteer, you're the coordinator, or what you are of the event that you're doing. Next. And as I said, if you can't get on, the secretary can help you. But many members, if they go onto their Portal Buzz or their Kiwanis portal, they will find that they can join to do the Presidium training. Next. And then you'll pick your classes, and that's what this one is. You don't have to watch them all at one time. They're short and brief, but it allows you to do each of them, and they want you to do these as well on an annual basis. Next. The training is there for us to use by Presidium, and it's custom made for Kiwanis, and they're trying to make sure that we're doing the best we can with it. And one of the requirements that they've asked is that we do this training at the conventions and the mid-years, and that we have it available. I have volunteered that I can go to the divisions and put it on. I've tried to concentrate in Arizona And then I will do it at the conventions. I'll be in Tucson for sure, and I'll be at the international. Next. One of the things, if you have a problem while you're out there on the trying to get into Presidium, these are the listed connections that you can get on to get that training. Next. And if you ask, well, who is it that has to do all this? This shows each position within Kiwanis, and everybody must do the youth protection. Some have to do the background checks, etc. Go ahead. All advisors must have a clear background check. And some clubs take it to the point of all members, and that can be done. I would recommend, if you're going to do all members, you'd want to get a hold of Safe Visitor Hiring Solutions, Safe Hiring Solutions directly, because I believe they do a discount if you're doing the entire club. The advantage of doing the background check is that most people are leery about it. They don't know what it's going to cover. It's going to cover felonies and situations that you've done, as far as the potential to deal with children. And it will include like a DUI that's aggravated. And so what you want to do, as we began this session, you can augment the background check if you're not doing all your members. And our club does only background checks, the advisors. You have to have the advisors, and anybody that's going to be vice governor or higher must do a background check. But as far as that initial membership application, we talked briefly about those first two questions on the back side. If you'll just go into detail, let that person, give them a minute to talk, and see if they give you feedback of anything that might hesitate they're getting a decent background check or anything else in the future. And if people ask, why does Kiwanis not background check everybody? Well, membership was our number one goal, and they were concerned that it goes hand in hand, but some people are leery about something they did that was done when they were young that wouldn't even come up on the background check, but they won't take it. Therefore, they wouldn't join Kiwanis. Next slide. This talks about how to get the background check, and again, telling you how to fill out the form. Next. This is the actual, how the secretary generates it. Go ahead. And then moving forward, the goal obviously is to have 100% of those people requiring a background check to have it done, and that it's done on a timely basis. Right now, Kiwanis is not prepared to issue you a background check in advance of your expiration date. We got an exception this year because we wanted it in the prior budget, because we had some people that were going to be due for a background check the next month. And it's a 2-year period from the date that you actually do it. So now we have those people expiring in September, and we can get their background check done in a Kiwanis fiscal year. Next. This one talks about chaperones, and that's all a lot of new things. There's a picture of Ellie here with the back to you wearing a yellow vest, and we purchased 10 of those on a discount from Harbor Freight, and that actually says Kiwanis Chaperone on the back. And like I said, our largest event is Kids Day at the fair, and it always has been. And we get as many as 3,000 special needs children. Well, you have to now have, on a day event, one chaperone for every 50 of the service leadership individuals that you have present. And we utilize key clubs from all over to facilitate and help us there with the children. And so for every 50 key club individuals or others, we have to have one chaperone. So this time we needed 6, and we had 6 individuals. we have this vest so that the other Kiwanians know who to go to if they have a question. They know who to go to if somebody needs assistance. And the emphasis is that everything should be directed towards the chaperones. Don't just guess, don't just make a premature decision that, well, maybe we can do this and not get a second opinion. Go ahead, next. Overnight events, they require 1 for 10, and the ratio is by the male female. So if you have 11 females on the overnight, you have to have 2 female chaperones. If you have 10 males, you have to have 1 male chaperone, and they have to be with the children at all times. The next 2 slides here, I'm not going to go into any details. There's a new policy. They haven't changed it yet, and it's called Policy 343. It basically states that if you're having an overnight event and the child at that overnight event wants to, even though they're a male, they want to identify themselves as a female, that we're going to make provisions that they can sleep with the females and they can shower with the females and use their bathroom. The females would have to state they do not want this, and then you are responsible for finding separate provisions for that individual. My recommendation is that we find out who those people are in advance, and that I do not personally support this. I think this is an avenue that's going to cause Kiwanis a tremendous black eye. We need to make sure that we're protecting all of the children and that we're protecting our Kiwanis at these events. Next. Transportation, I slightly disagree with Kiwanis International. They are going to adopt what I'm asking shortly. They just haven't done it yet. I agree with the rule of 3. You have to have 3 people in the vehicle. My rule is you have to have 2 adults. You can have all the children you want safely, but you must have 2 adults. And the reason for that is all it takes is 2 children in the back have a bad day. They make accusations against the driver. And then now that Kiwanian has got to prove himself that he didn't do what they're accusing him of doing and impugned his reputation. If you have 2 adults in the vehicle, it's much less likely that children in the back are going to accuse the adults of doing something wrong. So I recommend, other than a dire emergency where you've got to take somebody to the hospital immediately or any other situation like that, that you have 2 adults whenever you must transport. And the exception, obviously, is if it's your own child. Next. Consumption is an area that we need to be really cautious of. We are not to use any kind of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, intoxicants of anything at any service leadership event. Now, Kiwanians at a Kiwanis event can consume alcohol if done so reasonably. And that is, you must be remembering that you're a role model and you must do it with total professionalism. And that would be an event where we invite a Key Club member to receive a scholarship or something like that. And it's handled at a dinner or something. Medication, the students and the Key Club individuals, any of our associates, they must have a written permission. The medication must be in the original container. We don't give them aspirins. We don't give them anything, and they're responsible. What Kiwanis recommends is this next slide, and that we get some kind of waiver that's done by the parent and signed for it, that this child needs to have this medication and they will be responsible to take it, and they have it with them. And I would recommend, and Kiwanis recommends, that you have some type of ability to know which children are going to need medicine. And this is especially true on an overnight event where it's multiple day. Next. As far as reporting, This gives the 3 areas that you report as far as the state for Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And Presidium runs a hotline that you can call at any time. And I think that's on the next slide coming up. And they will answer questions and get it to youth protection. Go ahead. And this is the youth protection hotline manned by Presidium. And they will answer, they have professionals there 24 hours, and they will try to help you out. I physically called it to make sure that a body answered the phone and that they were prepared to answer questions, and both were affirmative. Next. The social communications is new. We want to make sure that what we do is not going to be used against you as a Kiwanian adult. You want to avoid one-on-one emails. You want to avoid one-on-one texts. And you want to always remember that rule of 3 and involve somebody else. There's 2 new points here at the bottom. The first one is that we want to avoid members' personal information on any Kiwanis website. And this includes even sections that require a password. We've had districts that have actually been hacked and they've gotten in, and we are responsible if we're listing addresses, phone numbers, and other information for our Kiwanians that we do not want out in the public. And you can send it by email, but don't put it out there on a website where they can grab it. The second thing, I, as a secretary, I get a lot of emails generated to me from the Kiwanis website. And a lot of that, I average as much as 12 a day, but they're going to our website, they're fishing, and they're trying to find out. I can't overemphasize, do not open those up. On an Apple product, I'm not sure on Android, but you can push and just continue to hold down, and it'll display who it's from, what the message is without opening it. And then you can discard it. I would say half of my messages that I get are in Russian, and the other half are either pornography. They're people wanting to know who this is and what you do. And it has nothing to do with Kiwanis. I'm not saying we don't get legitimate messages. At the time of Kids Day, we're doing today a Kids Day at the ranch. And when we do that, we get legitimate emails. We're getting ready to do a car show. We get legitimate emails, and I send those to the chairperson, and we address those and get the information back. We do get information that people want to join Kiwanis. We act on those appropriately. Next. We are starting to do more and more online stuff. If one of the service leadership programs wants to do online, they should have 2 adults participating. That would normally be their advisors, and they want the individuals participating to be appropriately attired, use appropriate language, not be consuming things. It is to be as if you're in the meeting itself. Next. This talks about the code. Basically, we're not to photograph, we're not to do screenshots of youth, we're not to try and accent anything to embarrass them later. And as far as photographs, like with Kids Day, you can do general photographs that show a lot of kids, but you don't want to do one that focuses on one individual and try to publish that unless you get permission from their parents or guardian. Next. Culture of care. We've started, as was explained yesterday, we're teaming up with people like Erica's Lighthouse. They came to Las Vegas. It was based on a young girl that committed suicide. They wanted to make sure that other teens don't go that route, and they wanted to provide opportunity, and they're doing that for our young new leaders. We have Active Minds. We have groups that are in the universities that are associating and giving people alternatives and giving them positive feedback. Next. This one, again, talks about online training sources, and it just is re-emphasizing that there are avenues that key clubs and other groups can use to improve their communication with their members. Next. And this is the second 2-page document that I talked about. This is the front and back. And I recommend, and Kiwanis recommends, that you give this out to every volunteer participant at any event where we have kids. They read the front and back. It can be given out the day before, or it can be given out the day of the event. There's no reason you can't collect them back and then reissue them the next time and cut down on paper waste. But it basically just covers everything of youth protection and risk management in a simple 2-page reminder refresher. Next. And that's the end of it. The 2 things I'd like are, and if there's any gaps that you see that you want covered, Kiwanis International wants to know about it as well as I. And if you see any vulnerabilities that we haven't covered, we're always looking for what is positive, but we also have to use what is challenging. And we want to be able to improve and not make the same potential error again. And I'll end by saying I apologize for going so fast. It's a 2-hour presentation. I tried to get through it. I will have the entire PowerPoint available for anybody. I have the 2 documents available. I can answer any additional questions available. And the easiest email, and it will let me know that you attended the class. Just jot me a note and I'll put you on attendance form, is at Kiwanis Club of Phoenix at iCloud.com. That ends the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much, BK. I appreciate it. And I know that you normally like to take the 2 hours, but you did very well and filled up the hour. And I thank you for working so diligently on it. I know there's a lot of information in there, but I know that you're available to answer questions as they might come up. So I thank you so much for doing this. It's not something that we all like, but it's something that has to be done, and you do it well. So I thank you so much. Also, thank you for being a mentor to me as well. So
you're welcome on both.
Thank you. So can we all, this at the end of our time, we're to be over at 12 o'clock and it's 11:59. So what I'd really like to do is have everybody, please again, unmute yourself and say thank you to BK for all he's done.
Thank you, BK.
Thanks, BK.
Thank you, BK. Thank you, BK.
BK, can you put that email in the chat really quick so we make sure everybody gets it? That would be awesome. Just to everyone.
And I have that as well. If you don't catch it, you can always get it from me. So at this time, I'd like to remind everybody that there is going to be a board meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And I really need my lieutenant governors to be there. We have a couple of very important things that we need to discuss. And after the board meeting, we're going to have a quote unquote short mini training, some things that we need to go over again. So remind you, 2 o'clock, we'll meet back here again and hopefully have a good showing. But I would like to say thank you, everyone, for attending this mid-year. I know that it's not as enjoyable as meeting in person. It is cheaper. We still get to see our friends and say thank you for everything that we do. And once again, I really want to tell you how much I appreciate being your governor and getting this opportunity to make friends, not only in the Southwest District, but literally all across the world. So I thank you so much. I really love to get some feedback from anybody that has praise, criticism, whatever it is that you have to get, things that you'd like to see. Please drop me an email. You know how to find me. And so with that being said, I thank Ken for all of his hard work. And Lieutenant Governors, you got your agenda and everything in email. So I will see you back here at 2:00. Go have some lunch.
Hey,
And-
whoever's administering this, would you look at what's in the chat? There's a whole bunch of people that asked questions, and
Oh,
just to make sure that they're followed up on, because nobody was like answering those questions as they were happening. So
okay. Thank you. I was trying to do that. All of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of them.
yeah, well, they kept flowing in, but so just want to make sure that you were capturing those.
Okay, we're asked to access the presentation. Ken has taped, has recorded everything. Most of them are thank yous. Thank you to BK. Thank you for the mid-year. There are several people who would like to have a copy, and BK said he has that. So
So Governor,
there's a question here. Does this training count for our club? It counts for the people who attended the training. So that's why BK wants you to send him an email so you can get credit for it. And he did post it also on the chat.
so Governor,
Yes.
so I just started a email. Everybody who's registered for the conference within the next 5 to 10 minutes will be receiving an email with all of BK's documents. And then
Yay, thank you.
videos will be posted to the Southwest District YouTube page. Easiest way to find it is go to Google, search Southwest District YouTube page. Give me till sometime late tonight to get all the videos put together. Assuming they correctly recorded. We occasionally have technical issues, so we're hoping for the
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Now you know another reason why we thank Ken for all he does, because he keeps everything straight for us. So once again, I thank everybody for being here. I just appreciate you so much. You go out, tell your story. Please inspire those who are looking towards you. And I thank Lynn again for the fun and games. I thank Ken for making sure it's all done. And Jerry Whaling, who's not on with us today, is the education chair, helped us put all of this together. And so it's with a big heart, I say, thank you so much for being here and being a part of my family. So I would bid you adieu.
Governor,
Yes.
before everyone goes, I do want to
Yes.
invite anybody that is interested. And if you live in Tempe, if you are available either Friday or Saturday, next weekend, we are having the CKID Con at the ASU campus. So anybody is invited to come. If you want more details, please let me know. I can put my email in the chat. Or and if you want to register for meals, there are meals provided as well. And then we can set that up through Ken. So
In case you don't know, that was James Phelps, and he is our CKI administrator. And thank you for speaking up, James. It's good to hear from you.
great
Thank
to
you so
talk
much,
to you.
everyone. Yeah. Anybody have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Well, we'll see you at district. Get more people to come for district convention.
You will be hearing a lot from us about district convention. So look forward to that.
Don't forget to send your articles to News for You.
Yay, Candy. Okay.
And,
Bye,
and
everybody.
for the winners from the game, please send me email me personally your information so I can get your prizes to you.
Oh, by the way, those marshmallows kept me up until 2 in the morning.
Oh. Oh, but Candy, you were just so entertaining. It
You
was
were
just
the best.
wonderful. The entire night with such laughter was just totally awesome.
I have a great picture of you, Candy. I'm almost throwing up. It was wonderful.
Oh.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
I
for
got lunch,
coming.
Bye.
Mom.